Disappeared behind bars, the inmate who vanished without a trace. The vanishing. The cell door swung open at dawn. But the bed inside was empty. No struggle. No broken locks. No tunnel dug through the concrete floor. Just a thin prison blanket neatly folded, as if the inmate had simply vanished into thin air. The guards froze. Every second in a prison counts, doors locked, head counts done with military precision. But on this morning, one name wouldn't answer roll call. The inmate who had been locked down the night before was gone. And here's the strangest part, this wasn't an ordinary inmate. This was a man who had been serving a long sentence in one of America's most tightly guarded prisons, where escape was considered impossible. So how could someone disappear behind bars without leaving a trace? Was it an inside job? A ghost story? Or something much darker? To answer that, we have to go back to the very beginning. The arrival. A dangerous reputation. Before the disappearance, the inmate, let's call him Daniel Cross, was known across the cell blocks. He wasn't the loudest or the strongest, but he had a reputation. Rumors whispered that he once worked for a crew on the outside that specialized in heists. Other inmates gave him respect, but guards kept a closer eye on him. The daily routine. Life inside was strict. Head counts 3 times a day. Meals pushed through metal slots. Lights out at 10 p.m. Daniel seemed to follow the rules, blending into the routine like everyone else. But some noticed he rarely talked, and always kept his eyes moving, as if planning or waiting. Strange behavior. Weeks before he vanished, little things started to happen. Daniel refused commissary food, surviving only on the basics from the kitchen. He started giving away his possessions, an extra blanket, a set of prison shoes. Some inmates thought he had found religion. Others believed he was preparing for something big. One night, a fight broke out in the yard. 2 gangs clashed violently, drawing all guards to the chaos. When it was over, someone realized Daniel hadn't been in his usual corner. He slipped back into line minutes later, calm, unscathed as if he had been somewhere else. But where did he go during those critical minutes? And was that the first sign of what was to come? Whispers in the dark. Daniel's brief disappearance in the yard didn't go unnoticed. Word spread fast. In prison, nothing stays secret for long. Some inmates began whispering that Daniel had found a hidden route, an old service tunnel, a weak spot in the walls. Others thought he was simply testing the guards, seeing how fast they reacted when chaos broke out. The guards, however, didn't pay much attention. The fight had been bloody, and their focus was on locking down gang members, not a quiet inmate who kept his head low. Daniel slipped back into the shadows, blending in as though nothing had happened. Days passed, and Daniel grew even quieter. He stopped writing letters. He no longer joined the small group of inmates who played cards after meals. He spent hours sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall. Some believed he was depressed. Others thought he was preparing himself for something dangerous. One night, during lights out, an inmate in the cell next to him swore he heard strange sounds. Not the usual whispers or footsteps, but scratching. Faint, steady, like metal against concrete. When he tried to look through the crack in his door, Daniel was lying on his bunk, perfectly still, as if nothing had happened. The next morning, guards conducted a surprise cell search. They checked under mattresses, inside vents, and behind loose bricks. But Daniel's cell was spotless. Too spotless. No contraband, no scraps of paper, nothing. It was almost as if he had been preparing for this moment. That same night, another incident shook the prison. A guard making rounds swore he saw a figure moving in a restricted hallway, a place inmates could never reach. When backup arrived, the hallway was empty. Cameras caught nothing. But when head count was done, Daniel was there, standing quietly in line, eyes fixed on the floor. How did he always seem to be in 2 places at once? And what exactly was he planning? The vanishing plan. The prison kept moving like a machine. Doors slammed, alarms buzzed, head counts rolled on. But Daniel seemed to move differently, like he was operating on his own time. Guards often described him as present, but not really there. Some inmates claimed they saw him pacing his cell at night, whispering to himself. Others said he traced patterns on the wall with his finger, as if memorizing a map only he could see. One afternoon, Daniel was called out for a routine job, kitchen duty. Nothing unusual. He wore his apron, stood in line, and quietly served trays of food. But a kitchen worker later told a strange story. Daniel disappeared behind the storage room for nearly 10 minutes. When he came back, his apron was spotless. Not a drop of food or grease on it, which was nearly impossible in the chaos of the prison kitchen. The worker swore that Daniel was hiding something. But no one listened. Prison gossip was endless, and most dismissed it as paranoia. Still, some inmates noticed Daniel had stopped hoarding food scraps. He wasn't trading cigarettes. He wasn't bargaining for soap or instant noodles. He wasn't preparing for survival inside the prison. It felt like he was preparing for survival outside. Then came the night that changed everything. The guards stormed the cell blocks after an alarm triggered in the East Wing. Doors were locked, sirens screamed, and flashlights cut across the concrete floors. When they opened Daniel's cell, the bed was made perfectly, the blanket folded with care. But the man who slept there was gone. No noise. No struggle. No broken lock. Just silence. Daniel Cross had vanished, without a trace. The hunt begins. At first, no one believed it. Guards thought it was a mistake, a miscount, a misplaced inmate who would turn up in the showers or the infirmary. Head counts were redone, once, twice, 3 times. But every time, the result was the same. Daniel Cross was missing. The warden ordered a full lockdown. Every door slammed shut, every yard cleared, every inmate forced back into their cell. Sirens echoed through the prison like a storm. Guards swept through the blocks with flashlights, searching every corner, vent shafts, laundry bins, trash carts, even ceiling panels. Hours passed. No trace. Rumors exploded inside the prison walls. Some inmates whispered that Daniel had slipped out through the tunnels built decades ago during renovations. Others claimed he had bribed a guard, trading something powerful for his freedom. A few even said he never left the cell at all, that he had gone mad, and somehow disappeared. On the outside, word spread fast. News trucks parked outside the gates, cameras flashing, reporters demanding answers. Families of other inmates flooded the phones, panicking about safety. If one man could escape, they asked, who else could be next? Still, investigators had nothing. The cameras showed Daniel going into his cell the night before. But none showed him coming out. It was as if the prison itself had swallowed him whole. Then came the first real lead. A guard checking the old utility tunnels found something scratched into the concrete wall, letters, faint and jagged, almost like a message. And carved beside it, a symbol no one recognized. The question now wasn't just how Daniel had vanished. Was he working alone? The prison conspiracy. The strange markings in the tunnel sent shivers through the staff. Some thought Daniel had left them as a breadcrumb trail, a taunt to prove he'd outsmarted everyone. Others feared it was something far worse, a sign that the escape wasn't his idea alone. Investigators questioned the guards who had worked Daniel's block. Most swore they saw nothing unusual. But one guard, a rookie, admitted something strange. A week before Daniel vanished, he claimed he saw another officer quietly unlock Daniel's cell, then lock it again a few minutes later. When pressed for names, the rookie froze, refusing to say more. The prison hierarchy was tight, and guards protected their own. Any whisper of an inside job was dangerous, not just for reputations but for lives. Meanwhile, inmates began to talk openly about Daniel like he was a legend. Some said he had planned this for years, that his silence was part of a bigger scheme. Others swore he had connections to powerful people on the outside, people who could make men vanish. Days turned into weeks, and still no sign of him. Then, in a twist no one expected, investigators searching the prison library found something chilling. Hidden behind the spine of an old law book was a folded piece of paper. On it was a hand-drawn map of the prison's east wing, detailed, accurate, and marked with arrows pointing toward the old tunnels. The shocking part? The handwriting wasn't Daniel's. Shadows behind the walls. The discovery of the map changed everything. If Daniel didn't draw it, then who did? Investigators combed through the library, dusting books for prints, questioning inmates who had access. But in prison, nothing is ever simple. Half the block swore they hadn't been near the library in weeks, while the other half claimed they saw nothing. Still, one fact stood out: the map wasn't just accurate. It showed hidden areas that only staff were supposed to know about, and used service shafts, sealed stairwells, maintenance passages buried in blueprints decades old. Whoever drew it had access to inside knowledge. The warden tightened security. Guards now searched cells daily, and library visits were cut back. Inmates grew restless. Anger bubbled. Tension in the air was thick enough to snap. One night, a fight erupted in the cafeteria. Two rival groups clashed, fists and makeshift blades cutting through the chaos. Guards rushed in, batons swinging, dragging men to the ground. Amid the noise, one inmate screamed something that froze the room. They helped him. Daniel didn't escape, he was taken. The cafeteria went silent for a moment, before guards slammed the man down and hauled him away. But his words lingered, echoing through the cell blocks. If Daniel had been taken instead of escaping, then who was powerful enough to pull it off? The next morning, investigators found something that made the mystery even darker. In a locked storage closet near the east wing, one rarely used, they discovered a guard's uniform. It was crumpled, stained, and missing a name tag. Was Daniel's escape actually a kidnapping? And was someone inside the prison helping cover it up? Secrets of the uniform. The guard's uniform shook the investigation to its core. It was undeniable proof that someone on the inside had been involved. But the question remained: was it planted, or was it real evidence of betrayal? The warden ordered every officer in the facility to account for their uniforms. One by one, they lined up, jackets inspected, name tags checked. Every set was present. No one admitted to losing theirs. Yet, the uniform in the closet was real, stitched, worn, and clearly used. Whoever wore it had been moving through the prison unnoticed, blending in with authority. Investigators widened their net. They pulled visitor logs, phone records, even letters that inmates sent and received. Buried in the paperwork, one detail stood out. Daniel had received an unusual number of visits in the months leading up to his disappearance. The visitors weren't family, weren't old friends. They were strangers. Each used fake names, but the photos showed the same two people, over and over. Who were they? And how did they get clearance to meet him? The mystery deepened when a maintenance worker came forward. He admitted he had seen something weeks earlier but had kept quiet out of fear. Late one night, while repairing a leaking pipe, he spotted two shadows in a restricted corridor. One of them was wearing a guard's uniform. The other looked like Daniel. The worker swore Daniel saw him but didn't speak. Instead, Daniel raised a finger to his lips, signaling for silence, before disappearing into the dark. When investigators returned to that same corridor, they made a shocking discovery: a loose grate on the floor. Below it was a tunnel leading into the belly of the prison. And inside the tunnel, fresh footprints. Footprints in the dark. The tunnel was narrow, damp, and lined with rusting pipes. It wasn't part of the prison's official blueprint, at least, not the ones investigators were allowed to see. Flashlights cut through the dust as guards and federal agents crept forward, their boots crunching against the concrete. The footprints led deeper inside. Some prints were small, others larger, as if more than one person had traveled through. The air grew heavier the further they went, thick with mold and the metallic stench of rust. Halfway through, the team found scraps of fabric snagged on the rough walls. One piece was from a prison jumpsuit. Another, from the lining of a guard's jacket. Proof that Daniel hadn't traveled alone. The tunnel stretched for nearly a quarter mile before splitting into two directions. One path veered upward, toward a sealed stairwell long forgotten. The other sloped downward, deeper into darkness. The prince went both ways. Confusion erupted. Had Daniel escaped upward, toward freedom? Or had someone led him deeper below, where no one could see? Then came the discovery that silenced everyone. On the wall, drawn with something dark, maybe ash, maybe blood, was a single word, smeared in shaky letters. Not alone. The investigators froze. If Daniel hadn't escaped, Then was he still inside? And if he wasn't alone, who was with him? The split path. The tunnel now stood like a crossroads, two directions, both marked with footprints, both heavy with questions. The team split into two groups. One climbed toward the sealed stairwell, while the other pressed deeper into the darkness below. The stairwell team worked first. Their boots echoed against the iron steps as they pried open the sealed door at the top. Behind it lay an abandoned service corridor, thick with cobwebs and dust. It hadn't been touched in years, at least that's what they thought. But near the far wall, hidden beneath the grime, they found a bolt loosened on a metal gate. Someone had been here. Recently. Meanwhile, the second group pushed further down. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Water dripped steadily, and the tunnel walls narrowed, forcing the men to move single file. The footprints here were fresher, mud still wet, edges sharp. At the end of the tunnel, they stumbled into a hidden chamber. It was small, barely larger than a cell, but inside were objects that didn't belong. A plastic food tray, a torn page from a Bible, and a crude drawing of the prison scratched into the wall. But the most chilling discovery was in the corner. A chain bolted to the ground, with its end broken and jagged, as if something, or someone, had been held there, then freed. The investigators' flashlights flickered for a moment, and in that silence, one guard swore he heard breathing, though no one else was in the chamber. When they regrouped, both teams returned shaken. One path showed signs of escape. The other, signs of captivity. So had Daniel Cross broken free? Or had he been dragged deeper into a place no one was meant to find? The hidden chamber. The discovery of the chained room spread like wildfire through the prison. Guards whispered among themselves, investigators argued over theories, and inmates traded stories about what had really happened down there. Some swore Daniel had been imprisoned by other inmates in a secret society. Others believed the guards had staged the whole thing, covering up something too big to admit. The warden insisted the tunnels were relics from decades ago, sealed and forgotten. But the evidence said otherwise. Someone had been down there recently. Someone had been using that space. 4 days, investigators scoured the prison records. Blueprints were pulled from archives, yellowed pages marked with dust and age. But here was the twist. The official blueprints didn't match what the teams found underground. Sections of the tunnels were missing, deliberately erased. Someone had hidden the truth even on paper. Meanwhile, tension grew on the blocks. Inmates banged on their doors at night, chanting Daniel's name. To them, he was no longer just a man. He was a legend. The inmate who slipped past walls no one could break. Guards struggled to keep order, fearing a riot could break out at any moment. Then came the breaking point. While reviewing old security footage from the night Daniel vanished, an investigator spotted something unusual. For just a few seconds, on a grainy camera near the east wing, a figure in a guard's uniform was seen moving toward the tunnel entrance. The figure turned to the camera. The face was blurred, unrecognizable. But clutched in their hand was something shocking, Daniel's prison ID card. And in the final frame, before the figure disappeared into the dark, Daniel himself could be seen walking behind him, alive. And not alone. The man in the uniform. The footage rattled everyone. Daniel wasn't a ghost. He hadn't simply vanished. He had walked into the tunnels, alive, and following someone dressed as a guard. Investigators replayed the tape over and over, slowing each frame. The guard's uniform looked real, badge, belt, and boots. But the blurred face made it impossible to know who it was. Some insisted it had to be an insider, maybe even a high-ranking officer. Others feared something worse, that someone outside the prison had gained access, masquerading as staff. The warden tried to keep the discovery quiet, but in a place like prison, silence never lasts. Words slipped, and rumors exploded again. He didn't escape, inmates whispered. He was escorted. For investigators, the question shifted. If Daniel hadn't broken free on his own, then why was he being led? Was this a rescue? A kidnapping? Or the execution of a plan bigger than one man? Digging deeper, federal agents looked into Daniel's past. They uncovered a trail of unfinished business, an unsolved armored truck robbery, millions of dollars missing, and whispers of partners who were never caught. Daniel had been the only one imprisoned. The others had disappeared. Could it be that his old crew had finally come for him, years later, using the tunnels and disguises to pull off the impossible? Then, as if to taunt the search, another clue surfaced. In the prison mailroom, a letter arrived addressed to no one. No return address, no name. Inside was a single sheet of paper, with just 4 words scrawled across it. "He's not yours anymore." The letter's warning. The letter was unlike anything investigators had seen before. No fingerprints. No trace of ink or paper source. Just 4 words that shifted the entire narrative. "He's not yours anymore." The warden panicked. If Daniel's disappearance was the work of outsiders, then the prison's reputation was shattered. If it was an inside job, the system itself was rotten. Either way, the media was circling like vultures, demanding answers. The FBI stepped in, taking control of the investigation. They interviewed inmates, grilled guards, and examined every inch of the tunnels. Still, no concrete leads. Every clue seemed to vanish as quickly as Daniel himself. Meanwhile, inside the prison, the atmosphere grew toxic. Inmates started treating Daniel like a folk hero, a man who outsmarted the system. Some even claimed they'd received messages from him, smuggled notes promising freedom was possible. Whether real or fake, the rumors spread like fire, fueling unrest. But one detail changed everything. A forensic analyst studying the letter noticed faint impressions on the paper, like someone had written on top of it before tearing the page away. Under special light, the impressions revealed numbers. They weren't random. They matched coordinates. When agents traced the location, it led to an abandoned warehouse miles from the prison. The building had long been shut down, left to rot. But when they forced open the rusted doors, dust billowed into the air, and inside they found something chilling. A single prison jumpsuit, folded neatly on the floor. And next to it, Daniel's prison ID card. But Daniel himself was nowhere to be found. The warehouse secret. The warehouse find left more questions than answers. Daniel's jumpsuit and ID card looked deliberately placed, as if someone wanted investigators to see them. But there was no sign of Daniel himself. Forensics swept the site. No fingerprints. No DNA. Just dust, rust, and silence. Whoever had been there knew exactly how to leave nothing behind. Agents expanded the search around the warehouse. They questioned nearby residents, truck drivers, and workers from the old industrial park. Most swore they hadn't seen anyone in years. But one night shift security guard from a nearby factory gave a chilling statement. He claimed that on the night Daniel vanished, he saw 2 black vans parked outside the warehouse. He thought it was strange, but didn't report it. Hours later, when he looked again, the vans were gone. The FBI traced traffic cameras from the area. Most were broken, but one captured a blurry image, a van speeding down the road, its license plate removed. In the passenger seat, barely visible through the window, was a figure in orange, an inmate's jumpsuit. The footage was analyzed, zoomed, and enhanced. And though the face was blurred, investigators believed it was Daniel Cross. The revelation sparked chaos. If he had been taken from the prison and transported in vans, then the operation had been professional, organized, and well-funded. This wasn't a lone escape. It was a coordinated extraction. But just as investigators began piecing the theory together, another clue arrived. This time, not by mail, but broadcast. A local news station received an anonymous package. Inside was a DVD. When played, it showed a dimly lit room, a shaky camera, and a man sitting in a chair. His face hidden in shadow, but his voice clear. "He belongs to us now. Stop searching." The video message. The DVD rattled investigators more than any clue so far. For the first time, they had a voice, calm, steady, and confident. Whoever this group was, they weren't hiding anymore. They wanted everyone to know Daniel Cross was in their hands. Federal agents scrambled. Was this a ransom? A threat? Or a warning? No demands were made in the video, no faces revealed, no symbols or signs that could be traced. Just that haunting sentence. "He belongs to us now. Stop searching." The public went into a frenzy. News outlets ran the story nonstop. Talk shows debated whether Daniel was a mastermind criminal who arranged his own extraction, or a victim of something bigger than himself. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, secret government experiments, organized crime payback, even whispers of intelligence agencies pulling strings. Inside the prison, unrest boiled over. Inmates banged their doors, shouting Daniel's name, demanding answers. Guards feared a riot was only hours away. The warden ordered tear gas on standby, and federal agents tried to contain the chaos. Behind closed doors, however, investigators discovered something darker. A sound analyst studying the DVD picked up faint background noise. Beneath the man's voice, barely audible, were distinct echoes, dripping water, heavy machinery, and the low hum of ventilation fans. The combination wasn't random. It matched an environment they had seen before. A place filled with tunnels, pipes, and chambers. The sound was coming from beneath the prison itself. If Daniel had been taken, he hadn't been moved far. He might still be inside, hidden in places even the warden didn't know existed. Beneath the prison, armed with the sound analysis from the video, investigators launched a full-scale sweep beneath the prison. Teams of agents and guards descended into the old tunnels, following the faint echoes of dripping water and humming machinery. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. Tunnels branched into forgotten chambers, sealed doors, and stairwells that didn't exist on any map. The prison was like a body with hidden veins, carrying secrets no one was meant to uncover. In one chamber, they found an old chair bolted to the floor, its legs rusted with age. In another, they discovered burned scraps of paper, words too charred to read. Every step suggested that someone had been operating here, right under the warden's nose. But there was no Daniel. No body. No trace. Only the chilling possibility that he was still down there, or that he had been moved again, deeper into the shadows. The official report labeled him as escaped. But inside the prison, inmates told a different story. Daniel hadn't escaped. He had been taken. The legend of Daniel Cross. And that's where the mystery stands. An inmate locked in one of the most secure prisons in America vanished without a trace. No broken locks, no alarms tripped, no body ever found. Just tunnels, whispers, and clues pointing to something bigger than one man. Was Daniel Cross rescued by an old crew still loyal to him? Was he kidnapped by forces with power inside the prison walls? Or was he part of a plan so carefully designed that no one will ever know the full truth? One thing is certain. In a place built to control every second of every life, Daniel proved that even behind the thickest concrete, secrets can slip through the cracks. And his story leaves us with one haunting question. If a man can disappear behind bars, how many others already have?